this is just like what a typical general cleanup would include. So this is a Japanese maple. It's like an ornamental tree. We typically are not going to mess with these trees because they're kind of finicky. Beautiful trees, but you don't really want to touch them or trim them unless you are doing something very specific with a lot of supervision. These are called dwarf Yaupon, and you can see the really dark green growth compared to the really light new growth. The new growth is what you want to cut off, and you just want to kind of trim it back, but you don't want to really get into the dark green, and if you get too far into it, it'll just be sticks. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
So when you're trimming these, you want to trim them into the circle shape that they are kind of already naturally in, but you're just trimming off the new growth. You're not really getting down into the dark green. It's got a little bit of mulch here. You can tell you could use some additional mulch, but we don't apply mulch unless there's a mulch job on the schedule specifically. You also want to kind of create a little bit of separation between these shrubs so they're not right up against the back of the Yaupon. These are called boxwoods. And you can also tell that there's kind of some new growth on the top of these boxwoods that you can kind of clean up a little bit. All these grasses and stuff, you can use this weeding tool to get the weeds up. Because we're here only every 2 months, and the last time we were here it wasn't time to trim the liriope, you could technically cut this liriope back to the ground to, probably 3 or 4 inches high, so that it has room to grow and it gets rid of all these yellow kind of damaged ends. Again, all the weeds and the grass in here, the leaves in there. These are old boxwoods, and I'm pretty sure they're dead. So this probably died from like boxwood blight or something. Really all these plants need to be pulled out. He's got volunteers growing inside of these Yaupons. All this stuff doesn't belong in there, right? Lots of weeds inside the flower bed, so when we leave, this thing will be free of weeds. And I would say, because this service has a cap on it, I think it's a 1 hour cap, you would want to prioritize the weeds and the leaves and just making sure that it looks clean. You can also kind of trim up the shrubs a little bit, but you want to use that time to just give it the biggest impact. Also, if I rolled up on this property, I would call the office and I would say, hey, I know we have a 1 hour cap here. There's plants that need to be removed. There's weeds in the flower bed. There's liriope that needs to be trimmed back. Technically, I don't know if those crepe myrtles belong to him, but we could trim the crepe myrtles up, and then we'll walk in the back and see what the back has. But you might call the office and say, like, this looks like it's going to take longer than an hour with 2 guys. Can you call the client and see if he'll put an extra hour for us to be able to pull these dead plants out? If not, no big deal, we can leave them, but they look like rubbish. Also, we could really replace these boxes. And so we'll walk around to the back. All this stuff is weeds. You've got weeds inside the rocks here. You want to be sure to kind of grab it at the base so you actually get the roots up. And this big privacy shrub right here is called a variegated privet. I'm actually pretty sure that the previous homeowner, we planted all these for him so that we could create a privacy row, and they were probably about this tall. Now they're 10 feet tall. But all of this technically should be trimmed back probably 2 or 3 feet so that we can actually get in and out of the backyard without a lot of trouble. And then if you wanted the top trimmed, we could, but you can see just by looking back here, there's way more work here to be done than just an hour's worth of work. Anytime you go in a backyard, you want to make sure there's no evidence of a dog here. If you see a dog house or a dog toy, you want to be careful and make sure that there's no dog that's going to come get you. There's also dog spray repellent, should be in the truck. If it's not in the truck, it's in the stock shelf. But if there's a dog back here, you want to be able to defend yourself if for some reason it's a dangerous dog. But back here, you got a shrub row. You got some stuff coming over the fence. So there's just a lot more to do here than what he's given us permission to do. And so the question would be, what would we prioritize if we only had an hour? And I would just say the front flower beds for now. And because you don't want to rake leaves and then trim and then re-rake leaves, I would trim everything. I would pull all the leaves out. I'd pull all the weeds out. That's probably about as far as I would take it. And because you'll have an operations manager to talk to, so if you roll up on this place, you can ask them. Also, Ed, who's the guy that you just met, if you notice that there's plants that need to be replaced over here, somebody can contact Ed and say, hey, there's 8 or 10 boxwoods that are dead over here. Do you want to get a hold of this client and use it as an opportunity to upsell those plants? And so I know that's a lot of information for 5 minutes, but it kind of gives you a rough idea. And so what I'll I'll do is I'll trim a couple of these shrubs, and then I'll let you trim a couple of these shrubs. Are you okay with that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you can shut that thing off and